The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Buckingham Palace as Queen Consort Camilla walked through the grand corridors. Her footsteps echoed softly against the ancient walls, each step carrying the weight of recent troubling events. For 3 weeks now, precious royal treasures had been disappearing from the palace vaults, and nobody could explain how or why. Camilla paused at the window overlooking the palace gardens, watching the early morning gardeners tend to the roses. She clutched a steaming cup of Earl Grey tea, but her mind was far from the peaceful scene before her. The missing items were not just valuable artifacts, they were pieces of British history, some dating back centuries. The crown jewels remained safe, but smaller treasures like antique pocket watches, ceremonial daggers, and precious gemstones had vanished without a trace. Sir Edmund Blackwood, the chief of royal security, had been investigating the thefts for weeks. He was a tall man with graying hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. This morning, he had requested an urgent meeting with the Queen Consort, and Camilla knew it would not be good news. The palace staff moved quietly through their morning routines, unaware of the storm brewing behind closed doors. Maids dusted priceless paintings, footmen polished silver, and guards stood at their posts with the same dedication they had shown for generations. Yet somewhere among them, someone was betraying the trust that had been built over centuries of loyal service. Camilla's personal maid, Sarah, had served the royal family for over 20 years. She was a kind woman in her 50s with gentle hands and an honest face. Sarah had noticed her mistress's growing worry and had been extra careful to maintain the privacy of Camilla's chambers. Little did she know that her careful attention would soon place her under suspicion. At precisely 9 o'clock, Sir Edmund knocked on the door of Camilla's private study. The room was elegant but comfortable, with deep burgundy curtains and shelves lined with leather-bound books. Family photographs sat on the mahogany desk, and fresh flowers from the palace gardens filled a crystal vase near the window. "Your Majesty," Sir Edmund began, removing his hat and bowing slightly. "I'm afraid we have reached a difficult point in our investigation." Camilla set down her teacup and gestured for him to sit in the chair across from her desk. "Please, speak freely. What have you discovered?" Sir Edmund's expression was grave as he pulled out a small notebook from his jacket pocket. "We have been tracking the movement patterns of all palace staff during the times when the thefts occurred. We've also been monitoring the security cameras and reviewing access logs to various parts of the palace." He paused, clearly uncomfortable with what he was about to say. "The evidence is pointing to someone with regular access to the treasure rooms and detailed knowledge of our security procedures. Someone who knows exactly when guards change shifts and which cameras have blind spots." Camilla felt her heart sink. "Are you suggesting it's someone from within our own household?" "I'm afraid so, Your Majesty. The thefts have been too precise, too well planned to be the work of an outsider. Whoever is doing this has been studying our routines for months, possibly years." The weight of this revelation settled heavily on Camilla's shoulders. The royal household was like a large family, and the thought that one of their own could be stealing from them was heartbreaking. These weren't just objects being taken. They were pieces of the nation's heritage, items that belonged to the British people. Sir Edmund continued, his voice measured and professional. "We have narrowed down our list of suspects to 12 individuals who had access to all the areas where thefts occurred. These are people who work in different departments but whose duties sometimes overlap." "Who are they?" Camilla asked, though she dreaded hearing the names of people she knew and trusted. 3 guards from the night shift, 2 cleaning supervisors, 1 maintenance worker, 3 members of the curatorial staff, 1 administrative assistant, 1 kitchen supervisor, and— He hesitated. "And," Camilla prompted, "and your personal maid, Sarah Bennet." Camilla's eyes widened in shock. Sarah? But she's been with us for 20 years. She's completely trustworthy. I understand your feelings, Your Majesty. However, Sarah has access to areas of the palace that many others do not. Her duties require her to move through various secure zones, and she knows your daily schedule better than anyone. If someone wanted to avoid being seen, they would need that kind of intimate knowledge of your routine. The accusation hung in the air like a dark cloud. Camilla had always trusted Sarah completely. The woman had cared for her personal belongings, had access to her private chambers at all hours, and had never given any reason for suspicion. The idea that she could be involved in the thefts seemed impossible. "What do you propose we do?" Camilla asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sir Edmund leaned forward, his expression serious. "With your permission, Your Majesty, I would like to conduct a thorough search of your personal chambers. We need to examine every inch of the rooms that Sarah has access to, looking for any hidden items or clues that might help us solve this case." The request felt like a violation, even though Camilla knew it was necessary. Her private chambers were her sanctuary, the one place in the vast palace where she could truly relax and be herself. The thought of guards going through her personal belongings was deeply unsettling. "When would this search take place?" she asked. "Today, if possible." "We've already prepared search warrants and have a team ready to begin immediately. The sooner we can rule out your chambers as a hiding place, the sooner we can focus our investigation elsewhere." Camilla stood and walked to the window again, looking out at the gardens where tourists were beginning to gather for their morning tours. They came from all over the world to see the palace and learn about British history. What would they think if they knew that history was being stolen from right under their noses? "Very well," she said finally, turning back to Sir Edmund. "You have my permission to conduct the search, but I want to be present during the entire process. Of course, Your Majesty, we'll begin in 1 hour if that's convenient for you." After Sir Edmund left, Camilla remained in her study, staring at the photographs on her desk. Images of state dinners, charity events, and family gatherings reminded her of all the joy and privilege that came with her position. But they also reminded her of the enormous responsibility she carried as a guardian of British heritage. The hour passed slowly. Camilla tried to read, but the words blurred together on the page. She attempted to review her correspondence, but her mind kept wandering to Sarah and the other suspects. How could she look any of them in the eye, knowing they were under suspicion? At precisely 10 o'clock, Sir Edmund returned with a team of 6 royal guards. These were not the ceremonial guards in red uniforms that tourists photographed. These were security specialists dressed in plain clothes, carrying metal detectors, evidence bags, and other investigation tools. "Are you ready, Your Majesty?" Sir Edmund asked gently. Camilla nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she led them from her study to her private chambers. The search was about to begin, and she prayed it would bring them closer to solving the mystery of the missing royal treasures. The guards worked with quiet efficiency, their respect for the queen consort evident in every careful movement. They understood the gravity of what they were doing. Searching the private rooms of a member of the royal family was not something any of them took lightly. As they prepared to enter her bedroom, Camilla took a deep breath and steeled herself for whatever they might find. The truth, whatever it was, needed to come to light. The honor of the crown and the trust of the British people depended on it. The search began in Camilla's sitting room, a cozy space decorated with floral patterns and family photographs. The guards moved systematically, checking behind picture frames, inside vases, and beneath cushions. Their metal detectors swept across the walls, searching for hidden compartments or safes. Camilla watched nervously as they examined her personal belongings. Each item seemed to tell a story of her life. Books she loved to read, letters from friends, small gifts from various state visits. Seeing strangers handle these precious memories felt deeply uncomfortable, but she knew it was necessary. "Nothing here, sir," reported Guard Captain Morrison, a sturdy man with kind eyes who had served the royal family for 15 years. He understood the sensitivity of the situation and spoke in hushed tones, treating Camilla's belongings with the utmost respect. They moved next to the bedroom, where Camilla's four-poster bed dominated the space. The room was painted in soft blues and whites, with heavy curtains that could block out the early morning sun when needed. The guards carefully examined the wardrobe, checking inside shoes, jacket pockets, and jewelry boxes. Sir Edmund supervised the search while making notes in his leather journal. He had conducted many investigations during his career, but none quite like this. Searching a royal residence required a delicate balance of thoroughness and respect that challenged even his experienced team. "Sir," called Guard Williams from near the dressing table, "I'm getting a reading here." Everyone in the room froze. Williams was kneeling beside an ornate chest of drawers, his metal detector beeping softly but persistently. The chest was an antique piece, probably worth thousands of pounds on its own, with intricate carvings and brass handles that had been polished to a shine. "What kind of reading?" Sir Edmund asked, moving closer. "Metal, sir. Something substantial hidden inside or behind this furniture." Camilla's heart began racing. She tried to think of what could be causing the detector to react. The chest contained her personal linens and some costume jewelry, nothing that should trigger such a strong response. Sir Edmund examined the chest carefully, running his hands along the edges and tapping on different surfaces. "There's definitely something here," he murmured. "The back panel sounds hollow." With Camilla's permission, the guards carefully moved the chest away from the wall. Behind it, they discovered something that made everyone in the room gasp. A small section of the wall panel was loose, creating a hidden compartment that had been invisible when the furniture was in place. "My God," Camilla whispered. "I had no idea that was there." Sir Edmund put on latex gloves and carefully pried open the hidden panel. Inside was a space about the size of a shoebox, and it was not empty. Wrapped in black velvet cloth were several small objects that glinted in the morning light streaming through the windows. One by one, Sir Edmund removed the items and placed them on a clean white cloth that Guard Morrison had spread on the nearby table. The first object was an ornate pocket watch made of gold, with diamonds surrounding the face. The second was a ceremonial dagger with a jeweled handle that sparkled like stars. The third was a small crown that belonged to a historical collection, covered with rubies and emeralds. Camilla stared at the treasures in shock and horror. These were some of the missing items from the palace collection. They had been hidden just feet from where she slept each night, and she had never known they were there. "Your Majesty," Sir Edmund said gently, "do you recognize these items?" "Yes," she replied, her voice shaking. "That pocket watch belonged to King George IV. The dagger is from the medieval collection, and that small crown, it's from the children's historical display. But I don't understand how they got here." The guards continued their search with renewed urgency. If they had found some of the missing treasures, there might be more hidden elsewhere in the chambers. They examined every inch of the bedroom, tapping walls and checking for more secret compartments. In the bathroom, they discovered another hiding place behind the ornate mirror above the sink. This compartment contained several precious gemstones that had been removed from their settings, probably to make them easier to transport and harder to identify. "Whoever did this knew these rooms very well," Sir Edmund observed. "They knew exactly where to hide things, so they wouldn't be accidentally discovered during normal cleaning or maintenance." Camilla felt sick to her stomach. The evidence was mounting against Sarah, her trusted maid who knew every inch of these chambers. Sarah was the only person besides Camilla herself who had regular, unsupervised access to these rooms. "We need to speak with Sarah immediately," Sir Edmund said. "But first, let's finish the search." In Camilla's private study, they found nothing unusual. The bookshelves were filled with the novels and biographies she enjoyed reading, and her desk contained only personal correspondence and appointment calendars. The guards were thorough, but found no more hidden treasures. The final room to search was a small dressing room where Camilla kept her formal gowns and accessories for state occasions. This room was rarely used except when preparing for important events, and it was always Sarah who helped her select and prepare her outfits. As they entered the dressing room, Guard Captain Morrison's metal detector immediately began beeping again. This time, the signal was coming from inside a large wardrobe that contained evening gowns and formal coats. "There's definitely something metallic in here," Morrison reported. Sir Edmund opened the wardrobe doors and began carefully examining the interior. The gowns hung in neat rows, protected by cloth covers. At the back of the wardrobe, behind the longest evening dress, he discovered another loose panel in the wall. This hidden compartment was larger than the others, and when Sir Edmund opened it, he found the mother lode. Inside were at least 20 stolen items, including several pieces of antique jewelry, ceremonial medals, and small artifacts from various historical collections throughout the palace. "This is most of the missing inventory," Sir Edmund said, his voice grim. "Whoever did this has been systematically stealing from the palace for months and hiding the evidence here." Camilla collapsed into a nearby chair, overwhelmed by the discovery. Her private chambers had been turned into a storage facility for stolen royal treasures. The violation felt personal and devastating. "I need to understand something," she said quietly. "These hiding places, they're not visible unless you know exactly where to look. They're expertly concealed and positioned where normal cleaning wouldn't disturb them." "That's correct, Your Majesty. Whoever created these hiding spots had detailed knowledge of your room layout and your daily routines. They knew you wouldn't accidentally discover these compartments during your normal activities." The implications were clear and heartbreaking. Sarah had access to these rooms during times when Camilla was away on official duties. Sarah knew when the rooms would be empty and for how long. Sarah could have easily created these hiding places over time, using her position of trust to steal from the royal collection. Sir Edmund carefully catalogued each recovered item, photographing them and placing them in evidence bags. The total value of the stolen treasures was estimated at over £2 million, but their historical significance was priceless. "We have recovered approximately 80% of the missing items," he reported. "The remaining pieces are likely hidden elsewhere in the palace, or they may have already been removed from the premises." As the guards packed up their equipment and prepared to transport the recovered treasures back to the secure vaults, Sir Edmund turned to Camilla with a heavy expression. "Your Majesty, we need to locate Sarah Bennet immediately. Based on this evidence, she is now our primary suspect in this case. We'll need to search her personal quarters and question her about these discoveries." Camilla nodded slowly, though her heart was breaking. Sarah had been more than just an employee. She had been a trusted companion who had shared in the daily joys and sorrows of royal life. The thought that she could have betrayed that trust so completely was almost too painful to bear. "Where is Sarah now?" Camilla asked. "According to her schedule, she should be in the staff quarters preparing for her afternoon duties. But, Your Majesty, I must warn you that we cannot allow you to speak with her before we conduct our official questioning. Any contact could potentially compromise the investigation." Camilla understood the legal requirements, but she desperately wanted to hear Sarah's explanation. There had to be some reasonable answer for why the stolen treasures were hidden in her chambers. Perhaps Sarah had discovered them and was planning to report the find. Perhaps someone else had planted them there to frame her. But even as these hopeful thoughts crossed her mind, Camilla knew they were unlikely. The hiding places were too sophisticated, too perfectly concealed to be the work of someone trying to frame Sarah. They showed intimate knowledge of the rooms and careful planning over an extended period. As the guards prepared to leave with their evidence, Sir Edmund made one final observation that chilled Camilla to the bone. "Your Majesty, based on the sophistication of these hiding places and the systematic nature of the thefts, I don't believe Sarah was working alone. Someone with expertise in palace security and construction helped her create these compartments. We may be looking at a conspiracy involving multiple members of the palace staff." The investigation was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The palace corridors felt different as Camilla walked to the staff quarters that afternoon. The familiar paintings and tapestries that had always brought her comfort now seemed to watch her with accusatory eyes. Every servant she passed made her wonder if they too were involved in the conspiracy that had violated her most private spaces. Sir Edmund led a team of 6 guards toward Sarah's room in the staff wing. This part of the palace was simpler than the royal quarters, with narrow hallways and modest furnishings, but it was still elegantly maintained. The staff quarters had been home to loyal servants for generations, and the thought that betrayal had taken root here was deeply disturbing. Sarah's room was on the 3rd floor, a small but comfortable space that she had decorated with photographs of her family and mementos from her years of service. When the guards knocked on her door, there was no answer. "She's not here," reported Guard Williams after checking with other staff members. "Her roommate says she left about an hour ago, carrying a large suitcase." Sir Edmund's expression darkened. "She's running. Put out an alert to all security checkpoints immediately. Check the train stations, airports, and bus terminals. She can't have gotten far." While the search for Sarah began, Sir Edmund decided to examine her room for additional evidence. What they found painted a picture of careful planning and desperate greed that shocked everyone involved in the investigation. Hidden beneath Sarah's mattress were detailed floor plans of the palace, marked with guard patrol routes and camera blind spots. In her desk drawer, they discovered a small notebook containing a list of valuable items from various palace collections, complete with estimated values and descriptions of their locations. "She's been planning this for years," Sir Edmund observed, flipping through the notebook. "Look at these entries. Some of them date back 3 years. She's been studying our security procedures and cataloging valuable items systematically. But the most damning evidence was found in a shoebox at the back of Sarah's closet. Inside were business cards for several antique dealers in London, along with handwritten notes about potential buyers for specific types of historical artifacts. There were also deposit slips showing regular cash deposits into a bank account that far exceeded what Sarah could afford on her salary. She wasn't just stealing for personal gratification, Sir Edmund concluded. She was running a sophisticated operation, selling royal treasures to private collectors who wouldn't ask questions about their origin. Guard Captain Morrison discovered something else that sent chills down everyone's spine. Taped to the inside of Sarah's wardrobe door was a detailed schedule of Camilla's daily activities, including times when she would be away from her chambers for extended periods. The schedule was updated weekly and showed months of careful observation. "She knew exactly when it was safe to access the Queen Consort's rooms," Morrison reported. "She timed the thefts to coincide with official engagements, state dinners, and travel days when Her Majesty would be away for hours at a time." The investigation team also found evidence that confirmed Sir Edmund's suspicions about accomplices. In a manila envelope hidden behind Sarah's mirror were architectural drawings of the palace walls, showing the location of old servant passages and structural weak points that could be exploited to create hidden compartments. "These drawings are too detailed and technical for Sarah to have created herself," Sir Edmund noted. "Someone with expertise in construction or palace maintenance helped her plan the hiding places." The drawings were signed with the initials TH, which Sir Edmund quickly identified as belonging to Thomas Hartwell, a maintenance supervisor who had worked at the palace for 12 years. Thomas had legitimate access to architectural plans and the skills needed to modify wall panels without detection. As the pieces of the conspiracy came together, Sir Edmund realized they were dealing with something much larger than a simple case of employee theft. This was an organized operation involving multiple palace staff members who had systematically betrayed centuries of trust. 2 hours later, Palace security received a call from British Transport Police. Sarah Bennet had been arrested at Victoria Station, attempting to board a train to Dover with a suitcase full of cash and what appeared to be travel documents for France. When she was searched, officers found over £50,000 in various currencies and a passport that had been recently renewed. She was brought back to the palace under guard, her face pale and her hands shaking as she was led into the security office for questioning. Sir Edmund had seen many criminals during his career, but few had fallen as far as Sarah, who had thrown away 2 decades of loyal service for money. "Why did you do it, Sarah?" was the first question Sir Edmund asked as she sat in the sterile interview room, a cup of tea growing cold in front of her. Sarah stared at the table for several minutes before finally speaking. Her voice was barely audible, filled with shame and regret. "My daughter," she whispered. "My daughter needed surgery in America. The treatments weren't available here, and they cost so much money. More money than I could ever earn in my lifetime." The room fell silent as the human tragedy behind the crimes began to unfold. Sarah's daughter, Emma, had been diagnosed with a rare brain tumor that required specialized treatment at a clinic in Houston. The experimental procedure cost over £300,000, an impossible sum for a palace servant. "I never meant for it to go this far," Sarah continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. "At first, I only took one small piece, a silver letter opener that I thought wouldn't be missed. I sold it to pay for Emma's initial consultations." Sir Edmund listened without judgment as Sarah explained how one theft had led to another. The antique dealers she worked with had praised her access to genuine historical artifacts and encouraged her to bring more items. The money was better than anything she had ever imagined, and Emma's medical bills kept growing. "Thomas helped me because I was desperate," she continued. "I begged him to help me access areas where I could hide things temporarily. He knew about the old wall cavities from renovation work he'd done years ago. He never took anything himself. He just helped me because he felt sorry for my situation." The confession revealed that Thomas Hartwell had been reluctantly drawn into the scheme through compassion rather than greed. Sarah had convinced him that she was only borrowing the items and would eventually return them once Emma's treatment was complete. He had used his technical knowledge to create the sophisticated hiding places, believing he was helping save a young woman's life. "Where are the remaining items?" Sir Edmund asked gently, recognizing the genuine anguish in Sarah's voice. "There's a storage unit in East London," she replied, providing the address and key location. "Everything I couldn't sell immediately is there. I kept hoping I could stop, that I could find another way to pay for Emma's treatment, but the bills kept coming." The storage unit search revealed the final 20% of the stolen treasures, carefully wrapped and stored in climate-controlled conditions. Sarah had at least taken care to preserve the historical artifacts, even as she stole them. Her notebook showed that she had researched the proper storage methods to prevent damage to the priceless items. As the investigation concluded, Sir Edmund found himself in the unusual position of having to balance justice with compassion. Sarah had committed serious crimes that violated the trust of the royal family and the British people. But her motivation was the desperate love of a mother trying to save her child's life. The final chapter of the case came when Camilla herself requested a private meeting with Sarah before she was formally charged. Against the advice of legal counsel, Camilla wanted to understand personally how someone she had trusted so completely could have betrayed that trust. "Your Majesty, I know I can never make this right," Sarah said when they met in the same study where the investigation had begun weeks earlier. "I've dishonored my position and violated your trust, but I want you to know that Emma's surgery was successful. The doctors say she has an excellent chance of full recovery." Camilla sat quietly for several minutes, processing the complex emotions she felt. The betrayal still hurt deeply, but she also understood the impossible choice Sarah had faced between her loyalty to the crown and her love for her daughter. "I wish you had come to me," Camilla said finally. "If you had explained your daughter's situation, we might have found another way to help. The royal family has charitable foundations specifically designed to assist with medical emergencies." Sarah's face crumpled as she realized the tragic irony of her situation. Her crime had been unnecessary. Help had been available all along if she had only asked for it. The legal proceedings that followed were swift, but fair. Sarah pleaded guilty to theft and was sentenced to 2 years in prison, with the possibility of early release for good behavior. Thomas Hartwell received a suspended sentence and community service, given his minimal role and genuine remorse. The recovered treasures were returned to their proper places in the palace collections, though additional security measures were implemented to prevent future thefts. Background checks for palace staff were strengthened, and new monitoring systems were installed in sensitive areas. But perhaps the most significant change was the establishment of the Palace Staff Welfare Fund, created by Camilla to provide emergency assistance to employees facing financial hardships. The fund was designed to ensure that no palace worker would ever again feel so desperate that they would resort to stealing from the crown. Sarah's daughter Emma made a full recovery from her surgery and returned to university to study medicine, determined to help other families facing similar medical crises. Emma never learned the full truth about how her treatment was funded, though she sometimes wondered why her mother seemed so sad, despite the successful outcome. The case officially closed 6 months later, but its impact on palace security and staff relations lasted much longer. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. However, Camilla's compassionate response to the crisis ultimately strengthened the bonds between the royal family and their devoted staff. The missing royal treasures had been recovered, but the investigation had revealed something more valuable than gold or jewels: the complex humanity that exists within even the most traditional institutions. Sometimes the greatest treasures are not the ones kept in vaults, but the understanding and forgiveness that allow people to heal from their mistakes and build something better for the future.